Oops.
All right. All right. So we have with us today Teressa Oliverio. Freeze? Am I saying that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, okay. Who is a graduate of our program. She's got her degree in rehabilitation counseling and currently works for accessibility for WVU's Accessibility Services Office. So she's an accessibility specialist here at WVU. And so with that, we're going to go ahead and get started into the questions because the first one should allow us to learn a little bit about you, Teressa. Um, so first, tell us a little bit about why you chose to pursue a degree in counseling.
Okay, so my background is a little different. When I first started to go to undergrad, I went to school to be a teacher. I wanted to focus my teaching on family and consumer science and health education. So that's my double major in secondary education. I felt that the school system was lacking a focus on students who did not wish to pursue a college career, and they didn't teach a lot of the basic life skills to students, such as budgeting a checkbook, how to find a house, what to do if you do go to college and get a degree. So once I graduated, not only was there a shortage in those classes being taught, there's also a shortage in being hired. I found myself working at a rehabilitation center here in Morgantown, and I started looking into rehabilitation counseling. My family has a strong background in rehabilitation counseling, so I spoke with some family members about what it entailed, and I really loved it because I also learned that there was a shortage of resources for individuals with newly acquired disabilities and learning how to function if they did have some sort of disability in society. So once I learned that the rehabilitation counseling program could kind of take my focus and put everything together, I knew that that was the degree that was for me.
Okay. I always think it's interesting how people kind of their life path brings them oftentimes to rehab counseling. I've not heard of anybody yet say, yes, in my undergraduate career, I knew that I wanted to be a counselor and a rehabilitation counselor. So I always find it interesting to see how others have come into this profession. So very interesting. So tell us a little bit about your job now, your current job, and how you found your current job. And even you said you were working in a rehab setting here in Morgantown. So maybe even a little bit about that, but mostly about your current role.
So in the rehabilitation center that I worked at Morgantown, I was a case manager assistant. So it was my job to coordinate after service care for individuals who were leaving the hospital.
Okay.
When I was in the program, my internship, I was at the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation in Washington, Pennsylvania, so the OVR.
Mm-hmm.
And my job there was working as a transition specialist. I worked with high school students and I helped them focus on post-secondary education goals, meeting those goals, and getting employment. Once I graduated, I was looking for jobs back at the university. Since I'm from Morgantown, I enjoy the university. I really wanted to work for the university. The job opened up here, being an accessibility specialist, and I work with college students of undergrad, graduate, and professional programs to help them get their accommodations that they've had from high school or newly acquired in college.
Okay. And so that pretty much answers kind of the next question of what type of agency you work for now and the client population you serve, unless there was something more you wanted to add to that one.
No, the
Okay.
client population is typically the students that come in.
Sounds good. So kind of take us through what your typical day might look like, especially kind of in terms of what percentage you might, rough estimate obviously, but how much time you think you might be actually meeting with students and versus documentation, meetings that you might have. Just kind of take us through what your typical day might look like.
So a typical day for me, I would say the biggest majority of my time is spent with meeting students and doing intakes. Doing the first initial intake typically takes anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes because that's where you're really getting to know the student, talk to them about how they're doing in class, what their goals are, what their disability is, what their functional limitations are, strengths, and things like that. So on a typical day, I can do probably about 3 intakes during the day. And then after that, of course, we have to do documentation because you have to document or it did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
So documentation probably takes a couple hours of my day. In addition to meeting with new students, I also have previous students that I meet with. I currently have a caseload of over 400 students that I work with. So a lot of them have been established with me, and they may come in with questions about not receiving their accommodations, inquiring about additional accommodations that they may need, or just resources about the university. Other things that I do throughout the day, I also put on presentations for faculty and staff to educate them about our office, and attend webinars and presentations myself. So each day is full of a lot of things to do.
I can imagine. And because you're in a university setting, is there like I would think that maybe the beginning of the semester is especially busy for you, but I don't want to assume that. I mean, is there a time of year that's typically busier and then it kind of slows down a little bit, or is it pretty consistent?
So throughout the semester, I would definitely say the week before class up to, the first 2 weeks of class are our busiest, with students coming in, making sure they requested their accommodations correctly, making sure they're following the process. And then it slows down for a little bit until midterm, kind of the same thing, just making sure they're on track. And then, of course, you have finals. So that's when students are really reaching out to make sure everything has been put in place for them for their final accommodations. The month of June is a very busy month for us. That is, the whole month of June is new student orientation. So that will be for all incoming freshmen. And we encourage all students who are going to register with our office to stop over, meet their specialists, provide documentation, and discuss the difference between high school accommodations and college accommodations to kind of get them prepared for August.
Interesting. I would not have thought it would start that early, but it does make sense to get everybody kind of ready to go. And so there's not, I'm assuming, fewer delays once they get started in August.
It really helps for students to come in June or at least a month before the semester begins, especially for our incoming students, because there is a difference when they're used to their IEPs and 504s in high school coming to college accommodations, because some of them do not transfer over. So learning documentation that we require and the difference in accommodation will help them prepare to be successful their freshman year.
Excellent. Well, great. Okay, so I'm going to move on to some kind of a little bit more in-depth personal questions. What do you like most about your job?
So my favorite thing, it has to be when students come to me and I see them succeeding because they are utilizing their accommodations. We work graduation every year. So I will have students come up to me as I'm walking around and making sure that individuals are getting seated in the accessible seating. And they'll come up and thank me. They say without the accommodations, they couldn't have graduated. I had one girl yell my name across the area and come running to me and hug me because without the accommodation, she said she never thought she would graduate. And she actually just emailed me this semester. She was accepted into a master's program. So wow. I think that makes me feel so good and that I'm actually doing the job that I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it really makes those tough days a little bit easier when you get that kind of payoff at the end. That's good.
Absolutely.
Excellent. On the flip side, what are some less positive aspects about your job?
So some things I find to be less positive would be we have documentation standards. So in order to provide accommodations for students, we have to have some form of documentation. So if students don't follow up with me and bring me their documentation, I can't give them the accommodations that they need. Another thing that I see that's less positive, I'll meet with students and I know they need the accommodations put in place, but they're too embarrassed to go talk to their instructors. They don't want to be singled out. They don't want their friends to know they're not sitting in the same room with them and taking the test. So therefore their grade suffers because they're ashamed of using accommodations.
Interesting. Okay. All right, moving right along. How do you feel that the counseling degree that you got right here at WVU prepared you to work for the Office of Accessibility Services?
So I feel it gave me a good grasp on some counseling techniques, listening skills, how to present myself to students. But more so, I feel I got a really in-depth knowledge of disability and functional limitations. So that way, when I'm meeting with students who have never used accommodations or have a new diagnosis, I can talk to them about not only academic accommodations that can help them, but other resources in Morgantown, such as working with Department of Rehab Services or working with the Caruth Center. So that way they get the resources that they need to be successful while they're here on campus.
Mm-hmm. And for those who might not know, what is the Caruth Center?
The Caruth Center at the university, they provide psychological counseling for students at the university, and it's set in their tuition. So they're able to go over there and see an actual therapist or psychiatrist. They also do, in addition to counseling, they also perform psychological evaluations.
Okay, great, thanks. So what types, and I'm again making an assumption here that you did get some additional certification after graduation, but what types of training, certification, or licensure have you pursued since you've graduated?
So since I graduated, I am a certified rehabilitation counselor, so I do have an active CRC. This past summer, I did take 2 classes, so that way I do have the 60 credit hours required to be eligible for my LPC. So I'm currently working on securing supervision and filling out my application so I can also get my licensed professional counseling certification.
Wonderful, great. And so with the CRC, there's still the continuing education, so I'm sure there's some additional training that you're getting kind of along the way too.
Absolutely. I'm constantly doing webinars, going to presentations, and to maintain those hours so that way my certification can be renewed.
Yep, better than taking the test again.
Absolutely. I will not retake the test again.
I agree. Are there professional organizations that you're involved with, and what are they, if so?
Yeah, so I'm an active member in Kappa Delta Pi, which is the International Society for Honors in Education. I am a trained presenter in the leadership network of the Mid-Atlantic ADA. I'm also on I'm an advisory board member of the Clinical Rehabilitation and Mental Health Counseling Program here at West Virginia University. At the university, I sit on the Veterans Committee, and I also sit on the Morale, Health, and Welfare for Vets Committee.
Very nice. Keeping busy.
Have to keep busy, have to keep educated, have to keep busy,
Yep.
have to keep going.
Exactly. So this one might be a little bit of a tricky one, but can you describe an ethical dilemma that you might have addressed in your work?
Yeah, so being from this area, I have a son. Currently, he's a junior at West Virginia University, so he attended high school here also. And due to that, he has friends that have graduated from Morgantown high schools and are coming to West Virginia University. There was an incident, it was about a year ago. One of his best friends, who I was very close with, who stayed at our house, had registered with our office and was assigned to me. Now, I, of course, wasn't going to tell my son that he had registered with me, but I felt that the student would not be honest with me about his disability, that maybe he would be afraid that I would tell my son, and that he would be ashamed to talk to me about accommodations that he needed.
Mm-hmm.
So when this came up, I politely emailed the student back and told him that he would be switching to work with another counselor here in the office.
great. That's a really good example of a real life dilemma that could come up for sure.
It was difficult because since I knew the student, I knew that I would provide him the help that he needs,
Mm,
and we were comfortable talking to each other. But I was just worried that in his best interest, he
mm.
may not be comfortable talking to me.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So you mentioned, of course, the students have to provide documentation of their medical condition for eligibility type purposes. Are there specific laws that you have to be knowledge about on a day-to-day basis?
Yes. So when it comes to documentation, of course, we are bound by HIPAA. But also being at the university, we're also bound by FERPA. And I'm sorry, I've went blank on what FERPA stands for. It's the Family Educational Act. So with
Yes.
FERPA, I should have looked that up. I just went blank on that. So with FERPA, I am allowed to talk to faculty about a student who is registered with our office to discuss accommodations if it's in the best interest of the student.
Hmm.
While doing so, I am still bound by HIPAA because I cannot talk about their specific diagnosis and functional limitations that they have. So there's that fine line of discussing accommodations they're approved for, how to best implement them, and not making sure that I'm not divulging too much information about the student's personal medical history.
Mm.
In addition to that, of course, I'm also bound by the ADA, the American Disability Act, and also the FHA, Fair Housing Act, when it comes to
Hmm.
students requesting housing accommodations.
Hmm. Interesting. I wouldn't have thought of the Housing Act, but that does make sense since we've got lots and lots of dorms here on campus.
Lots of emotional support animal requests, so
Yes,
we
that's true.
call it today.
Interesting. Do you find that faculty are, for the most part, receptive to kind of knowing what boundaries you have to establish with them, or do you get some like negative feedback from faculty that want to know more?
I've really never had a lot of negative feedback from them. Typically, faculty members are the ones who are more leery with sharing a student's name when they're asking about accommodations and trying to figure out if what they're doing is correct. So they definitely respect the student's privacy.
That's great to hear. All right, so we're going to continue on. Can you describe the relationship you have with other professionals, anybody that you might kind of work with on a day-to-day basis, or an interdisciplinary type treatment team, if that even exists?
So day to day, I work with the other specialists in the office and our director. The other specialists in the office have similar backgrounds to mine, so it's nice to be able to bounce ideas off of them when maybe we have a complicated case or some documentation that we need help interpreting. I have to work really closely with faculty of other departments whenever it comes to providing accommodations. Not all accommodations are cookie cutter for each student. So just because one accommodation may work for one student in one setting, it may not work that way for another student. So I really have to maintain a good working relationship with our faculty to ensure that they have the best interest in mind for student when they're providing the accommodations.
Okay. Do you have to reach out at all to the medical professionals of the students, or does that rarely come up for you?
I don't reach out to the medical professionals for the students. It's the students' responsibility to gather their documentation and provide that to me.
Hmm.
However, there have been a few cases where perhaps their primary care physician didn't know exactly what sort of documentation I was looking for, so I would contact them and describe to them exactly what I was looking for.
Okay.
I have spoke to there was only one incident of one student that I spoke with her psychiatrist. It was kind of a unique situation, and the psychiatrist wanted to speak with me and the student in a conference call so we
Hmm.
could make sure that her case was understood correctly.
Interesting. Okay. And this one is, I think it's off topic, off script, but I promise it's not hard. But because of the type of work that you do, what types of accommodations do you find students are requesting? I mean, are there certain accommodations that are more common or typical that you would say that they're making a request for?
Sure. I would say the most common accommodations, and I'll explain why. The most common accommodations that we offer would be extra time and reduced distraction room.
Hmm.
That fits a lot of students' diagnosis. And this is what I explain to faculty because they just think that everybody gets those two accommodations. However, it helps students who have ADHD. If they have extra time and a reduced distraction room, if they could become distracted, they know that they're not going to be watching that clock every second, that they do have a little bit of leeway. For a student who has really severe anxiety, that comes out a lot as test anxiety. So therefore, it may take them a little bit of time to gather their thoughts, thoroughly read questions. For a student who has a learning disability, it may take them a little longer to work a math problem or to read a question and to read it for context. Some other accommodations that are common here, we offer software. It's free of charge, and we also train the student on it, and that would be Kurzweil, which are our audio books. It's an electronic book that would read to you. You can create outlines and study guides from it. And we also offer Sonocent, and that is an audio note taker. With Sonocent, they're able to take their laptop or phone to class and record the lecture and then organize those notes to print out in a transcript. So those are our most common accommodations that we offer.
Very nice. That Sonos, I wish I had just as an undergrad in general. I feel like it would be really useful to be able to record all of the lectures and then hear them back, but I don't know that
It's
that was
been
even around.
Kurzweil is nice too. For my classes I took this summer, if there was reading online or I was able to like copy and paste, you can also copy and paste the text from online documents into it, and then it sits and reads to you. And for me, that helps me retain a lot more information if I'm hearing it and able to read along with it. So I love Kurzweil.
Yeah, yeah. So this next question may just be a simple yes or no for you, but have you now, or are you, have you in the past, or are you now involved in any kind of research related to rehabilitation counseling or mental health counseling? So I'll let you answer that one first.
No,
Okay.
I have not.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. In terms of culture and diversity, what groups of individuals have you worked with, and how has your degree prepared you to work with these groups?
So working with the whole student population, it's a very diverse population that I work with. That includes your traditional students coming in here at 18 years old as a freshman, also a lot of non-traditional students who may be coming here age 25 or older, working with the veterans. And then of course, I also work with international students. So diversity is huge here. My degree, some classes that I had, we talked about different cultures and how disability is recognized in each culture. I have found that to be extremely helpful when I'm working with students, especially international students, where their disability may be viewed differently, diagnosed differently, their documentation may be different than what we're used to. So when I'm talking to them, having that understanding of where they have come and their background as it relates to how disability is viewed in their culture really helped prepare me to work with such a diverse population that we have.
That's great to hear. All right, and final question. How do you view yourself as an advocate in the profession, and what advocacy type activities or services have you been involved with? And that could be work related or outside of work as well.
So this has been a big focus of mine this year, actually. I've worked here for 3 years, so the first couple years was really learning about the job, learning about accommodations and disability and how it relates to my job. This year here, I really wanted to do a lot more than that. So I've worked on being more of a presenter and doing presentations. I was selected to be a trainer for the Leadership Network at the Mid-Atlantic ADA, as I said, so I went to training for that. I'm now qualified by them to provide presentations that were created by Cornell University for faculty staff at the university, but also in the community as well. In addition to that, this year I did have presentations selected at 2 national conferences. One was the HEAD conference in Ohio, and one was the Kappa Delta Pi conference that was in Indianapolis. I was selected to present at a statewide conference here in Morgantown at the Student Success Summit. And I've also sat on a panel for the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation Center conference that was in Pennsylvania. So inside of just making myself available at the university to present to faculty and staff to educate them, I'm trying to go out and do a lot more presentations on a national level so that way I can provide awareness with my knowledge and background.
That's great. That's great. There's tons of opportunity out there. I think that's kind of what I'm hearing is that there's opportunity available. It's all about putting yourself out there and kind of taking those steps to further your professional career and to become an advocate for the community. So that's wonderful. So with that, that wraps it up. If there's anything else you want to add, feel free. If not, if you want to stay on for just a second and while I pause this, and we definitely thank you for your time. And I think this is really interesting to hear your perspective and the work that you're doing within a university setting. And I think it'll be beneficial for the students to hear too. So thank you very much.
Thank you.